In 2023, Lucy Letby was sentenced to 15 whole life terms following a trial that lasted almost a year. The jury heard claims that she had been deliberately harming newborns under her care, injecting air into their veins, overfeeding them with milk, and even poisoning them with insulin. But there was no smoking gun, no security footage, no eyewitness, and no one ever saw Letby harming a child. The case against her was mostly built on medical evidence. And now, according to a senior panel of neonatal experts, this evidence isn't even correct.
Death or injury of all the affected infants were due either to natural causes or to errors in medical care. There were serious problems related to medical care of patients at this hospital. There were problems related to teamwork and interdisciplinary collaboration at the Countess of Chester Neonatal Unit. In summary, ladies and gentlemen, we did not find any murders. In all cases, death or injury were due to natural causes or just bad medical care.
A new group of 14 experts, including some of the most respected neonatal specialists in the world, now claim that Letby did not kill these babies. And in fact, they argued that no crimes were committed at all. Instead, they say that every death could be explained by natural causes or medical negligence. One of the experts, Dr. Xu Li, accused the prosecution of misusing his research to prove Letby's guilt. He claims that the scientific evidence presented in court was flawed and that key medical conditions were overlooked.
Lucy was charged with 7 murders and 7 attempted murders. In our opinion, the medical evidence doesn't support murder in any of these babies, just natural causes and bad medical care. Our full report will go to Lucy's barrister later this month, and then it'll be up to him in the courts to decide what next to do. We hope the authorities will consider our findings seriously and act accordingly, because you will not find a better panel of experts anywhere in the world. If you are looking for the truth, you don't need to go any further.
This has thrown the case into chaos. Letby has already lost 2 appeals, but with this new medical report, her legal team is fighting to get her conviction overturned. If the experts are right, this isn't just a wrongful conviction. It's one of the biggest miscarriages of justice in British history.
Hello, Lucy, is it?
Yes.
Hello, my name's Chester, please. Okay, step in 2 seconds.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Have you seen anybody else? Yeah, not a problem.
I'm going to put you in the back seat over here.
Hold on, man, until
Yes.
get the seat up.
Okay, just take a seat in there for me, Lucy. I'll move that seat forward a bit shortly.
Yeah, I've just had knee surgery. So
Oh, right, okay.
They told me that there would be a lot more deaths and that I've been linked to somebody that was there for a lot of them.
Did you have any concerns that there was a rise in the mortality rate?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me about that. What concerns did you have?
I think we'd all just noticed as a team in general, the nursing staff, that this was a rise compared to previous years.
Between 2015 and 2016, a wave of unexplained medical emergencies struck the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Babies who had been stable suddenly collapsed. Some died within hours, others were left with life-changing injuries, and doctors were baffled. Premature babies always came with risks, but the number of unexpected deaths and near-fatal collapses was alarming. Something was wrong, and according to the prosecution, the common factor in it all was Lucy Letby. Over the course of nearly a year, prosecutors laid out their case. Letby was a serial killer in scrubs, attacking newborns in a variety of ways whilst carefully covering her tracks. The methods they claimed she used were chilling. Prosecutors said Letby deliberately injected air into the baby's bloodstreams, causing fatal embolisms that blocked circulation, leading to sudden collapses. Others they claimed had air forced into their stomachs, causing severe distress and organ failure. Some babies, they alleged, were given dangerous amounts of milk, leading to bloating and respiratory failure. The jury heard claims that some of the newborns had suffered blunt force trauma, though there was no physical evidence to directly tie Letby to these injuries. In at least 2 cases, prosecutors said Letby deliberately injected babies with insulin, causing severe drops in blood sugar levels. This wasn't a case of one tragic death or a single misjudgment. The prosecution argued that Letby had a pattern. Each time a baby suffered a collapse, she was there. When a baby suddenly stopped breathing, she was on shift. When parents were called in for emergencies, she was the one comforting them. They also pointed out what they called disturbing behaviour outside of the hospital. Letby had searched for the parents of deceased babies online, repeatedly. She had kept what a judge later described as morbid records of her alleged crimes. But the most damning piece of evidence, at least in the eyes of the prosecution, was a handwritten note inside of her home during a police search. On it she had scrawled the words, "I killed them on purpose because I'm not good enough. I am evil. I did this." That, they argued, was her confession. The note presented in court was the ultimate proof of guilt, a rare glimpse into the mind of a murderer who had finally admitted the truth to herself. But despite this, no one ever actually saw Letby harming a child. There were no witnesses, no CCTV, no undeniable proof. The case was built almost entirely on medical evidence and statistical patterns. The prosecution was convinced they had enough, but was it really proof beyond reasonable doubt? Lucy Letby's trial was one of the longest and most complex murder cases in British history. It lasted nearly 10 months, with prosecutors laying out their argument piece by piece. Their case rested on two main pillars: expert medical testimony and circumstantial evidence. The key witness for the prosecution was Dr. Dewey Evans, a retired paediatrician. He analysed the medical records of each baby and concluded that their collapses could not have been natural. He told the jury that babies showed signs of deliberate harm. His opinion formed the backbone of the case. Without it, there was no forensic proof that a crime had even taken place. But the expert testimony was not enough on its own. Prosecutors needed to place Letby at the scene every time something went wrong. That is where the circumstantial evidence came in. Letby was working every time a baby collapsed or died. The prosecution built a pattern. Wherever she was, babies got sick. When she wasn't there, nothing happened. Then there were her notes and online searches. Police had gone through her home and found what they call morbid records. She had kept hospital paperwork linked to some of the deaths. She had searched for the parents of the deceased babies multiple times, even months after the children have died. But the biggest piece of evidence, the part that the prosecutors called her confession, was a handwritten note found in her house. Letby's defence argued that the note was not an admission of guilt. It was writing of a woman who's struggling with depression after being suspended from a job she loved. But the jury saw it differently. In 2023, Letby was convicted of 7 counts of murder and 7 counts of attempted murder. She was sentenced to 15 whole life terms, meaning she would never be released from prison.
This was a cruel, calculated and cynical campaign of child murder involving the smallest and most vulnerable of children, knowing that your actions were causing significant physical suffering and would cause untold mental suffering. You created situations so that collapses or causes of collapses would not be obvious or associated with you. You removed and retained confidential records of events relating to your crimes and checked up on bereaved parents. There was a deep malevolence bordering on sadism in your actions. During the course of this trial, you have coldly denied any responsibility for your wrongdoing and sought to attribute some fault to others. You have no remorse. There are no mitigating factors. In their totality, the offences of murder and attempted murder were of exceptionally high seriousness, and just punishment, according to law, requires a whole life order. Lucy Letby, on each of the 7 offences of murder and the 7 offences of attempted murder, I sentence you to imprisonment for life. Because the seriousness of your offences is exceptionally high, I direct that the early release provisions do not apply. The order of the court, therefore, is a whole life order on each and every offence, and you will spend the rest of your life in prison.
For nearly 2 years, Lucy Letby sat in a prison cell, convicted of being Britain's worst child serial killer. But in 2025, everything has changed. A group of 14 doctors from around the world reviewed the case, and their conclusion is simply mind-blowing. There were no murders, just medical errors. That statement came from Dr. Shu Lee, a retired Canadian neonatal expert who led the panel. According to him, every single baby in the case had died or collapsed due to natural causes or serious mistakes made by doctors at the hospital. This wasn't some small-scale review. These were some of the world's top neonatal specialists from countries including Canada, the US, Germany, Sweden, and the UK. They weren't paid for their work. They weren't connected to Letby, but after going through the evidence, they tore the prosecution's case apart. One of the prosecution's key arguments was that Letby injected air into the baby's veins, causing fatal air embolisms. An embolism is a blockage in the bloodstream that can shut down the heart. To back this up, they relied on a 1989 academic paper that studied cases of air embolism in newborns. But the lead author of that paper was none other than Dr. Shu Lee, who we mentioned earlier. And in 2025, Dr. Lee publicly stated that the prosecution misused his research.
This particular case, because they used my paper, I was curious to see what exactly did they use my paper for. And when I saw the evidence that they gave, I was disturbed because it was wrong. And after I gave the appeal, I realized that she had no further road to go because she had exhausted all avenues of appeal. And yet, it remained that the evidence was wrong. Now, I didn't know at the time whether she was innocent or guilty. What I did know was that the evidence that was used to convict her was wrong. And to me, that's a problem. You shouldn't be using wrong evidence to convict someone, regardless of whether she's guilty or innocent.
Lucy Letby was convicted because of the medical evidence that was presented to the jury. Medical evidence led by the lead prosecution expert, Dr. Derry Evans. If that evidence was at fault and was wrong, the conviction is unsafe. It's as simple as that. This is fresh evidence. This is new evidence. It's compelling evidence because of the nature of the people who are giving that evidence. And it wasn't heard by the jury. And if Dr. Shu Lee and the panel are correct, no crime was committed. If no crime was committed, that means that a 34-year-old woman is currently sitting in prison for the rest of her life for a crime that just never happened.
The paper had been taken out of context to support Letby's conviction. But that wasn't all. When the panel of experts reviewed the medical evidence for each baby, they found an alternative explanation for every death and every collapse. These findings changed everything. The expert panel didn't just poke holes in the case, they completely dismantled it. And now her legal team is taking the case to the Criminal Cases Review Commission. The Criminal Cases Review Commission is a body that investigates potential miscarriages of justice. If they find the new evidence strong enough, they could send Letby's case back to the Court of Appeal. And if that happens, the entire case could be reopened. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you have any case suggestions, please leave them in the comments. And if you liked what you saw today, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. It's always appreciated. And yeah, I just really am excited to be covering cases like this on this channel and having people actually listen to me. So yeah, thank you for being here and I hope to see you in the next one.